Okay, hello everybody. This is session 3 of my Introduction to Computer Science class. Today we will be learning about just conditionals. Sorry, this title's wrong. I was planning on teaching loops, but I didn't want to make it as long as last time because personally I got a little tired and I feel like other people did too. And if you don't stick around, then what's the point of doing it? So I'm going to try to keep this one a little shorter, hopefully under half an hour. So I'll go ahead and get started without further ado. So last session I introduced the str method or function, you may remember. What that did was it took a string or an integer, sorry. It took a number variable and it turned it into a string so you could print it out. And I have another method that's quite a bit like that. It's called int. And what this does is exactly the opposite. So basically, if I do raw input, which you guys will remember is exactly the same as input, except instead of shooting out a number, it returns a string. And if you're trying to do numerical things like addition or stuff like that, you cannot do that with raw input. So that's what this function is useful for. So right here in this, I have two variables, str_var, and str just stands for string. So I'm going to call it string variable. The shortening there is just for readability sake. So string variable is equal to raw input, and then the prompt that I'm passing into raw input is enter a number. And when I do that, it will, or once I type in a number and hit, sorry, something in my throat. Type in a number and then hit enter, it will set string variable or str_var to whatever I typed in, okay, as a string. Now, if we're going to do numerical stuff like addition, subtraction, and comparisons, that's no good. We need a number. So in order to do that, we use the int function or integer, whichever way. It does have to be spelled int, but if you want to pronounce it integer, people will know what you're talking about. Int var is going to then be equal to the integer of what we typed in, not the string. So we're basically taking what we typed in, putting it in a string variable, and then putting the number that is inside of that string variable into the int var variable. So that's all that's going on in that second line. And then on the third line, it says print you entered, and we concatenate string, and we're using that str method again. So that takes int var and turns it into a string, and then we just throw a period on the end. Now you can probably tell that this program is completely useless, and all it's meant to be is an example program on how the int function works. I didn't have a whole ton of time to write it out, so I kept it short and sweet because I know that's what you guys like. Okay, so we'll go ahead to the next slide here. So there's one more data type on top of the strings and integers and doubles and all that decimal-y stuff. This one is the simplest variable there is, both human understanding-wise, I guess, and computer-wise. So if anybody is at all familiar with how computers work, they'll know that they work in ones and zeros, and you'll often see like ones and zeros on the news or something if they're talking about hacking or something. But that's how the computer talks to itself, I guess. And that's when you write a program in Python or any language, it gets compiled down, so it turns into machine code, and that is binary. And that's what your computer can understand. So without that, your code is completely useless. So anyway, this data type is called a Boolean. It's kind of a weird word, and you might have heard it before. Basically, all it is true or false. That's it. There's nothing else. It can't be a number, can't be words, not a character, not anything else, just true or false. And in Python, when you are setting it to either true or false, you have to capitalize true or false. They will not work, at least not to my knowledge. I haven't done a ton in Python, but I'm fairly certain that won't work. So make sure you capitalize true and false. In a lot of other languages, you won't capitalize true and false, but in Python you do. Got to make that very clear, because that will break your code. Anyway, Boolean is often shortened to bool, and you just say bool, I guess, and that sort of means Boolean. So either on or off, 1 or 0, there or not there, true or false. That's all there is to Booleans. It's a very, very simple concept, and I really don't want to overcomplicate it, because it shouldn't be. Now, Booleans, even though they're the simplest data type, they can do some really cool stuff, surprisingly. So now we're going to talk about conditionals. Now, conditionals are basically any point in your program where it has to make a decision, either on its own behalf or on behalf of the user. So basically, if works kind of like a function, but not quite. So you can say if and Boolean. You wouldn't actually type in Boolean. You would either type in true or false, or something else, but I'll go over that later. So you could say if true, and then that will always be true. Then it will run the code after that. And I know this isn't a great example code. I have a little program that I wrote that I'll show you guys in a bit to demonstrate all this. Anyway, if Boolean true, so that could either be true or false. And then elif or elif, however you want to pronounce that, Boolean, so that can either be true or false. And these elifs, or else ifs, as they're called in almost every other language. Not sure why Python decided to do elif, but they did. Nothing we can do about it. Sorry. Anyway, elifs, they always go after an if, and it's not really required that you have to be checking on the same condition or variable, and I'll explain that later if that doesn't make sense. But you almost always use them in a sequence. So you say if the user chose 1, then do this. Elif, they chose 2, then do this. And then else is just anything else that happens. So if the if didn't get called and the elif didn't get called, then it just goes to the else, and that automatically gets run. If neither of the other ifs or elifs have worked. And in a big program, you might have, I don't know, like 10 or 20 elifs, but you can only have one if in a part, I guess. I'll show you what I mean by that. But you can say elif as many times as you want after if. But if you say if after an if, it doesn't work the same as an elif. And I keep on thinking of elephants. Sorry. I should have put a picture of an elephant on this slide. Anyway, else is what happens after everything gets called. And now we have some cool Boolean operators. At least that's what I call them. I guess you can call them what you want, but anyway, you've probably seen the first 4 of these: less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. I'm not going to explain what those are, because I sure hope you know. Because if you graduated 3rd grade, you will probably know what those mean. how you use those, I'll just type out some code here real fast. You use those by, you could say 3 less than 4, or you know what I mean. Or you could do put an equals there, less than or equal to, or you could do greater than, and oh, sorry, my phone is buzzing. And then greater than or equal to. That's all there is to those. And when you call something like this, it will return a Boolean. Now, it's not quite like a function, but in the same way that a plus, minus, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and the modulus return another number, these return a Boolean variable, so either true or false. And then we have 2 more slightly common ones, the equal function and the not equal function. Now, these are not one equal sign. I have to make that very clear because everybody messes this up. Every single person. I did. You will. Everybody will. But you put 2 equal signs when you're comparing them. And when you're setting something, you only use 1. So if, like right here, it says x equals true, I'm setting that, so I only use 1. But when you're comparing, you use 2 equal signs. And when you're trying to do a not equal, and the not equal will basically return the opposite of what the equal one would. It's a really simple concept if you think about it. It basically just negates what got returned. So if it would return a true, then it just gets turned into a false. There's lots of ways to use all of these as far as decision making goes in your programs, but almost all of these will be used with numbers. So you could say 3 equals 4. That would return false. But if you said 3 exclamation mark equals 4, that would return true because 3 does not equal 4. Very simple, and I'll demonstrate those right now, I guess. I think only one person ended up replying to my survey that I sent out, but they said that they did not like me not using idle. So I am going to return to idle. I figured it out on Linux, which is good. And I will so quickly switch to idle. Here we go. Okay, so I wrote a quick calculator program, and I'm hoping that this font is big enough. Sent out, but they said that they did not. Sorry. Actually, let me try to quickly get this font a little bit bigger. Maybe. There we go. Okay, we'll do 14. That's better. All right. So you guys should definitely be able to see this. So at the beginning of the program, I'm just printing out "Welcome to Ben's calculator." There's nothing complicated about that. And then I'm making a menu, and that sounds intimidating, but it's not. It's just saying choice 1, addition, choice 2, subtraction. And there's nothing complicated to that. There's no secrets. It's just printing out addition and subtraction. You can change those numbers to whatever you want. They don't correlate. They're just flat out text. You can change the words to whatever you want. It doesn't matter at all. Anyway, then I make a new variable called choice. And this goes along with what I was saying last time about having well-named variables that correlate to what they actually are holding. So choice is equal to input, and then the prompt that I'm passing into input is choice with a colon and then 2 spaces to give them room to type. So they'll type in either 1 or 2, hopefully. But if they don't, that's okay, because I have some error handling built in. So I guess this will be a lesson in error handling too. anyway, here I say if choice equals 1, and I could replace this equals with any other of those Boolean operators that I wanted. Now, choice is just representing what was typed in by input. And if you guys remember, input only I can't think of the word. Only spits out numbers, not strings. Okay, so we don't have to worry about using that int method. But I figured I'd show it to you guys just for the heck of it, because it's a nice thing to know. Anyway, num1 equals input. So this is if choice is 1. And if you look, choice 1 is addition. So I'm going to be doing addition. Anyway, num1 equals input, and input is just a number. Or it's just spitting out a number. And then I say enter first number with the colon 2 spaces. You can change that to whatever you want. Anything that you see in the green font here, you can change to whatever you want, pretty much, and the code will still work. Except for a few exceptions, and we'll talk about those at a later date. Num2 is then equal to input, enter second number. Nothing complicated there. And then I have a new variable that I'm making, which is called sum. And sum is equal to num1 plus num2. Actually, I'm going to change this to result to get rid of some confusion. Here we go. Anyway, sum is equal to num1 plus num2. Now I do some concatenation. Now this is kind of confusing, so watch carefully. So I say print, and then I say num1, and I pass that into the str method, which changes it to a string so I can print it out, plus, and then, so that plus sign is just concatenating this string to the space plus space. So that's just to give give some white space to the plus sign. And then I say string, str num2. So I'm changing the num2 variable to a string. And then I concatenate that to the equal sign here, which is not setting anything. All that is a string. And then I concatenate that to the sum passed into the str method or function. So after that, that'll just return that, and then once that's done, it will skip over the elif and the else because it's already picked one of the blocks to use, which is this one. So it skips over those, goes to the end of the program, sees there's no other code, and then the program ends. And you've got your calculator. However, if you are feeling up to it, you can enter 2 and do some subtraction, which is not fun. I don't like subtraction, but anyway. It basically does the same thing here for these first 2 lines. I just copied and pasted that. And then result is equal to num1 minus num2 instead of plus. That's just a basic math operator, nothing fancy there. And then I'm doing the same exact thing as I did in the addition, the choice 1 here. But instead of a plus, I'm printing out a minus because it is subtraction. And that's all there is to that. If you don't know what this is doing, then wind the video back a little bit, and then you will figure out how, or what it's doing, sorry. And then else. So this else is so if it is not choice 1, then it will go to choice 2, or it will check if it's choice 2. And if it is choice, or if choice does equal 2, then it will run the elif, or the code inside of the elif. And then if it's neither of those, so if it's not indicated by the if or any of the elifs, it will run the else, as I was talking about earlier, and say print, enter a valid menu choice. And that kind of sounds like I'm ordering food. But anyway, That is what happens if the user did not enter a 1 or a 2. So if neither of these blocks of code were run, then it will print this out because it knows that the user did something wrong. And then the program ends. That's all there is to it. Now, as I was saying earlier, any of these, this could be replaced with the not equal operator indicated by the exclamation mark equals. But for the sake of this, I will keep it as equals equals. I'm trying to check if it is the same. That's all there is to that. So as I was saying earlier, I think I said it earlier. I'm not going to switch back to the slides, but anyway, that chart I showed you, all of those, less than or equal to, all those operators, when you have a number on both sides, they do return a Boolean, and a Boolean is what the if or elif needs to run. Now, before I end the class, I need to tell you this. In a lot of other programming languages, and I'm not going to do this to confuse you, but there will be curly braces right here and right here to indicate, where all the code goes. But in Python, it's a wee bit different. It doesn't use that very direct sort of if it's in the curly braces, then it's the code in the block. Instead, it uses a colon on the end of the conditional, so on the end of the if, and then after the colon, everything inside of the if or elif or else has to be indented with one space. If you don't know how to do that, it's either 4 spaces with your spacebar or 1 tab with the tab button. Personally, I prefer the tab, but it's really up to you. It doesn't make a difference. So that just has to be indented, and that's how it knows what code is inside of the if. Okay, so that's why this is indented. It's not just to look pretty. It's for the actual running of the program. If you didn't have it like that, it would not work. So that's pretty much all there is to this program. I'm going to go ahead and run it and show you guys how it works. To save it real quick. And I'll put it right here next to the code. So this here is, you see these first, oh wait, I'm not sure if you guys can see this. Oh, you can't. One moment. Let me just flip something around here. Entire screen. Okay, sorry for the Inception thing going on. Oh dear. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. Now you should be able to see this. So the first 3 lines here are just printed out right here. Okay. So those first 3 lines are printed out right there. Nothing complex about that. Now I'm asking for the input. And the prompt I'm using is choice. And then you can type in the choice you want. So I'm going to go ahead and run all three of those code blocks, the if, the elif, and the else, just to show you guys that it does work and how it works. So I type in 1, and right as I hit enter right now, the choice variable is set to 1 because that's what I typed in. Then it asks me to enter the first number, so I'll just type in 5. And then enter the second number, type in 5 again. That says 5 plus 5 equals 10. What a surprise. And those first 2 lines you see here are right here. You're prompting for 2 numbers and then setting them to their respective variables. And then you skip a line here that you don't see printed out, which is just adding them together and setting the product of those, or the result of those, to the variable sum, and then it prints them out. And I explained how that all worked a second ago. So rewind the video and check it out. Anyway, then, sorry, I'm not really used to idle, so I am a little, here we go, okay. So I'm going to run it again here. Let me just get the windows. There they go, now they're working better. So I'll run the second option, and this does the same thing. So I'll do 10 minus 5. 10 minus 5 equals 5. Very simple. Nothing complicated or magical going on in the background. And you can see all the code over here. And personally, I find it amazing that all that runs so very quickly. Computers are pretty cool. But anyway, I'll go ahead and run it with a choice that is not 1 or 2. So if I go ahead and say 4, it checks. It's going to check to see if it's choice, if the choice is 1. If it's not 1, then it'll check to see if it's 2. If it's neither of those, then it will just say, you screwed up. So please enter a valid menu choice. That's all there is to that. And I know some of you are going to be curious what happens if I don't actually enter a number into the choice, which I'm not sure what will happen. So my computer might just blow up. Oh, okay, so it just broke. So that's what happens if you mess up and your user is not too bright. Anyway, there you go. That's pretty much all there is to conditionals in a nutshell. We'll talk more about them as the time goes on. We'll use them all the time. So make sure you guys practice over this next week. They are incredibly useful. And I use them all the time, and I know you will too, because what good is a program if it can't do things differently every time? Or, you know what I mean. Anyway, with that, I don't think there's anything else to cover. So I'm going to go ahead and end the class. Kept it pretty short, I think. Let's see if it says how long it's been. Yeah, I actually don't know how to check. Anyway, so tell all your friends to watch this. Anyway, yeah, so that's all there is to conditionals. If you guys have questions, you can ask me using my email. You don't have to ask my friend, whose name I will not mention because this goes live on YouTube publicly. I don't want to do that. Anyway, you don't have to bother asking him anymore. You can just ask me directly. I will answer as quickly as I can, but I am kind of busy this week. And I know some of you are with marching band too. But anyway, feel free to ask questions, Google. And if you guys want, feel free to send me a project that you work on or something, or a little program. I mean, I'd really love to see it. I think that's super cool to see what you guys make. I always know that I love sharing my stuff with other people. Anyway, have a great evening or morning or whatever it is for you. And with that, good night.